Fellow Africans, today is the 4th of October 2023. This is Mr. Tubokumexke, the chairman for the Civil Rights Defenders in Sierra Leone, West Africa. Today, I want to take a look at Africa as a continent. The simple reason why today myself and my team, we want to take a look at Africa as a continent. It is far too long. Africa has been going through a lot of challenges and issues that keeps Africa backward. But the question that will come to mind is, have we sat down as Africans to understand the root cause or to understand the factors that keeps Africa backward? Today, I want to talk about the backwardness of Africa. Fellow Africans, Africa is backward to a point we can no longer see lights at the end of the tunnel. All hope is gone. There is no more hope for Africa. As young Africans coming up, they have no hope. Young Africans have been devastated. Young Africans have been demoralized. Young Africans have been intimidated. Young Africans have been bullied. Young Africans have been manipulated. By who? By the same Africans, the old folks. There is always a solution to problems. There is always a solution to challenges. There are always solutions to difficult times or difficulties. Today, we're going to talk about some of these challenges, and we're going to talk about some of these solutions. Fellow Africans, the solution for Africa, the solution for the breakthrough of Africans is in the hand of Africans. We have been accusing the West for so long for the problems or the challenges or the difficulties faced by Africans. But today, I want to announce to Africans that the problem that is facing Africans are caused by Africans. And the solutions are with Africans. Why is Africa so backward? Africa is backward because we continue to keep bad politicians in the continent. We continue to adore bad politicians in the continent. We continue to worship bad politicians in Africa or in the continent generally. I can see the new revolution for Africa. I can see breakthrough coming for the continent of Africa. And I would like to caution the West to keep off. I would like to caution the West to stay out of the revolution that is about to come to Africa. Let Africa solve its own problem. If the problem is being caused by Africans, Africans can solve it. Except otherwise, the West want to tell me that they are behind the problems in Africa. So they know how to solve the problem. But insofar As my research has proven, the problems and challenges that we are facing in the continent of Africa are caused by Africans. And so, it's only we the Africans can solve and resolve the problem. And how can this problem be solved? How can we reach a solution? It's through the young Africans. The young Africans with technology can solve the problem. We no longer need old folks in the politics of Africa, in our governance structure, in the African Union, in ECOWAS, and all other regional organizations of Africa, Central Africa, East Africa. We no longer need old retired politicians. The problem in the continent of Africa is caused by retired, corrupt African leaders. And they continue to take positions. They continue to create institutions for themselves to continue to cause more havoc in Africa. Recently, I heard about Elders Council in West Africa. Yes. Composed of the Obasanjo and others. That is also another manipulation of those retired corrupt African leaders who deliberately, with all their plans and strength, planning to destroy the upcoming young Africans. The old Africans don't want to give way to the young Africans. And those corrupt African leaders who have retired, they are still in governance, they are still on their seats. They continue to cause more havoc in Africa. With all of their behaviors, character perpetrated, do you still say the West is responsible for our problem? No. The problem of Africa is being caused by our retired, corrupt politicians. Until those corrupt politicians are being taken care of. Unless they are being taken care of. Or else Africa will continue to be where we are. So we are calling on all young Africans. We are calling on all young Africans in the continent to say no to bad politicians, to old retired politicians. Fellow Africans, we have the responsibility to protect our continent. We have responsibility to negotiate on behalf of our continent. We have responsibility to speak on behalf of our continent. Africa is the greatest continent in the world. With all the natural and mineral resources around the world, you found in Africa. Why is Africa still backward? Why is Africa still backward? With all the resources, fellow Africans, the day we are successful in getting rid of our old retired politicians in the governance structure of our continent, that will be the beginning of the breakthrough and success of Africa. It's far too long Africans have been going through poverty, backwardness, retrogression. Are we comfortable with that? Fellow Africans, it's time for us to rise up. Fellow Africans, it's time for us to stand up. Fellow Africans, it's time for us to speak out. Fellow Africans, it's time for us to take the bull by the horn. Fellow Africans, our problems are caused by Africans, and our problems can only be solved by the same Africans. So, I am calling on all progressive-minded Africans to stand up. I am calling on the continent of Africa to begin to pursue those old retired politicians. We no longer need them. We are warriors. Africans are warriors. And we must be seen as warriors. It is unfortunate for us to see Africans behaving as rats. No, we are more than the character of a rat. We are more than the character of ants. We are lions in the jungle. We are warriors. So it's time for us to begin to pursue those retired, corrupt African leaders. Our continent has been corrupt to a point. Our resources are being exported to the West. Fellow Africans, sadly, we see support given by the West to Africa, and we still see the corrupt African leaders taking those wealth back to the West. Are we serious about the development of Africa? And I would like to call on the West to put a stop to African leaders who will attempt to open bank accounts or to freeze all African leaders' bank accounts in the West. Bank accounts of politicians or African leaders must be opened or established in Africa. If the West is not condoning or the West is not having a syndicate with African politicians, it's time for the West to establish policies to put a stop to our African politicians from establishing bank accounts in the West. And all those established bank accounts of politicians, corrupt politicians in Africa, must be freed. I repeat, all established bank accounts of our retired politicians in the West must be freed. And those resources must be transferred to Africa, to the various countries and the continent. Fellow Africans, we need to stand up. Progressive-minded Africans, we need to stand up. It's time for us to take the bull by the horn. It's time for us to stand up. I am calling on all the continent. I am calling on all Africans within the continent to begin to speak out, to begin to stand up. We are tired of sitting down waiting for those old folks. Retired politicians, retired individuals in certain offices must give way to young people. It's only in Africa we still see politicians at age 90. They still continue to be in those offices. 98 retired, corrupt African leaders who have been in power for decades. Fellow Africans, it's time. And the time is now. The time is now. We have to take the bull by the horn. Enough is enough. I am calling on all Africans within the continent to begin act on all of our actions, to begin to speak out, stand up, speak truth to powers. This is a new revolution. This is a new revolution. We have to shield ourselves. We have to behave like warriors. As Africans, we have to behave like one. We have been demoralized. We have been intimidated. We have been bullied, manipulated, extorted, exploited. And we're still sitting down. Fellow Africans, I am calling on the continent to stand up and kick out our corrupt African leaders who meddle with the features of the young Africans. We are sick and tired. No good health facilities in Africa. Education facilities, if you don't go to the West, your qualification is not certified. Health issues, you have to go to the West. And that is not the Africa we used to know. Our politicians, corrupt politicians, empower health facilities in the West because they refuse to empower the health facility, to capacitate health facilities in their individual countries. And the continent has remained to become a cemetery. A place that is being abandoned. A place that is considered to be useless. But we know Africa, the continent of Africa, is not a place of uselessness. It's a useful place, a place of resources. Africa is supposed to be a donor country. We should be giving out donations to other continents around the world. Why is it an inverse? Why is it turning around? We are just receiving. We should be givers. Because Africa is blessed with all the resources of the world. With all God's given resources. God has deposited as many resources into Africa. But we don't know what we have. Fellow Africans, we need to begin to speak up. We need to begin to speak up and behave like warriors. We need to begin to speak up. We need to begin to invite the generations of the Julius Nyerere, the Kwame Nkrumah. We need to begin to invite their spirit. The spirit of the Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, the Lumumba, to spark up the spirit of the new revolution. Fellow Africans, I appreciate you all. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today as Africans. And we have to engage ourselves. We have to continue to establish our position. The continent must be free. Thank you, fellow Africans. Thank you to the West for giving us the support, for complementing our position for Africa to be a continent that is not a dependent continent, that we should be able to support ourselves. Instead of dependency syndrome. Africa is not a continent of beggars, but our retired, corrupt African leaders have changed the rationale behind Africa. And we no longer need beggars in Africa. We need producers. We need innovators. And that is where we are heading for. The new revolution is calling for innovation. Innovators. The new revolution is calling for producers, entrepreneurs. Fellow Africans, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Salam. 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 I pray that the spirit of our ancestors guide us in this venture. God bless Africa.